You won't believe what happened in the middle of New York City when a regular guy decided to take on a trending social media challenge. I mean, people say, don't try this at home, but he thought, what if I try this in public, in front of thousands of strangers? Yeah, not the brightest idea. So, here's the scene: Times Square, bright billboards, tourists everywhere, and in the middle of it all, Jake. Jake's not famous, not an influencer, just a 23-year-old guy with way too much confidence and way too little common sense. He saw this viral challenge online where people were supposed to balance a gallon of milk on their head, dance to a trending song, and then, if they managed not to spill, it meant they were challenge champions. Silly? Yes. Dangerous? Maybe. Entertaining? Absolutely. Jake thought, if I do this in Times Square, I'll go viral instantly. Millions of views. Sponsors. Maybe even free pizza for life. Yeah, his goals weren't exactly world-changing. He bought the milk, extra heavy, because of course, he picked the family-sized gallon, and set up his phone on a random trash can. A small crowd started forming, because, you know, when someone starts dancing with milk in the middle of the city, you can't just walk by. It's like seeing someone try to fight a goose, you just stop and watch. The music blasted from his phone. He carefully balanced the milk on his head, stretched out his arms dramatically like some kind of milk wizard, and started to wiggle his hips. The crowd chuckled. At first, things were going surprisingly well. Jake was keeping the milk steady. People started clapping to the beat. Then, disaster. Jake got too confident. He tried to spin. The milk wobbled once, twice, and then boom. One whole gallon of milk splashed all over him, the street, and, unfortunately, an innocent tourist from Ohio who had just bought a brand new, I Red Heart New York hoodie. The hoodie was now, I Red Heart Sour Milk. The crowd gasped, then burst out laughing. Jake stood there soaked, smelling like a cow farm, and instead of being embarrassed, he threw his arms in the air and yelled, I'm a legend. Someone shouted, do it again. And that was all Jake needed. Because once you get laughs, you don't quit. Oh no. He sprinted back to the store, dripping milk all the way, and bought another gallon. The cashier didn't even ask, just gave him that look like, you again? Meanwhile, the tourist from Ohio was ranting loudly, this is outrageous. I'm calling the police. But her husband was secretly recording Jake because he thought it was hilarious. Jake came back, this time with chocolate milk. His genius plan? Chocolate milk will look cooler when it splashes. He set up the phone again. The crowd had doubled, tourists, street performers, even a guy dressed as Spider-Man stopped posing for photos just to watch. Jake announced dramatically, ladies and gentlemen, this is how legends are made. He balanced the chocolate milk, started dancing again, and for about 15 glorious seconds, it actually looked like he might succeed. People were cheering. Cameras were everywhere. And then, splash! Chocolate milk everywhere. On him, on Spider-Man, on a little kid holding cotton candy, now it was chocolate candy. The crowd roared with laughter. Spider-Man, completely covered in chocolate milk, looked more like Mudman. Jake was trending. Right there, in real life. People were uploading clips instantly, milk guy in Times Square. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, videos were spreading like wildfire. But Jake wasn't done. Oh no. He wanted to push it further. Someone in the crowd shouted, do it with 2 gallons. Jake's eyes lit up like a raccoon finding pizza. 2 gallons. Twice the glory. Twice the disaster. He rushed back to the store. By this point, the cashier had already called the manager. Sir, he's on his 3rd trip today. But hey, money's money. Jake walked out balancing 2 gallons of milk on his shoulders like he was entering a WWE match. The crowd went wild. He climbed up on one of those big concrete steps, raised both gallons in the air, and screamed, "America, this is for you." He tried to balance them both on his head. People held their breath. The music started again. He began his dance. Wobble, wobble, steady. Wobble, steady. Then suddenly, boom. Double milk explosion. It was like Niagara Falls, but dairy. The entire front row of spectators was soaked. Tourists were slipping, Spider-Man had officially quit his shift, and Jake was laughing like a maniac. Police officers finally showed up. Sirens, flashing lights, the whole deal. One officer shouted, "Sir, step away from the milk," which is a sentence you don't hear every day. Jake froze. He was covered in milk, holding empty bottles like trophies, and grinning ear to ear. Instead of running, he yelled, "Follow me on Instagram," and sprinted away, leaving a trail of slippery chaos behind him. And here's the thing, Jake thought this was the end of it. But oh no, this was just the beginning. Because while Jake was running around New York, that video of him was blowing up in the UK. A British TikToker named Harry saw it and thought, "We can't let Americans have all the fun." Harry decided to recreate the milk challenge in London, but with tea. Yes, tea. Because if you're going to spill a drink in the UK, it better be tea. Across the ocean, in the middle of London, Harry scrolled through TikTok on his phone. He had messy brown hair, oversized glasses, and that classic, "I haven't slept in 2 days but I still think I'm hilarious" look. Suddenly, he stumbled upon the viral clip, a milk-drenched American screaming, "I'm a legend." Harry laughed so hard he nearly dropped his phone into his tea. This is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But if America has their milk guy, then the UK needs a tea guy. He set down his mug dramatically, like he had just declared war. His roommate, Oliver, walked in. "Harry, why are you staring at your tea like it's plotting something?" Harry grinned. "Not plotting. Trending. We're about to start a revolution, a tea revolution." Oliver blinked. "Mate, please tell me this doesn't involve you throwing tea at random people. You know that's how we lost America, right?" Harry ignored him. He was already setting up his phone. He grabbed the biggest teapot he owned, basically the size of a small pumpkin, and filled it to the brim. Steam was rising, and the kitchen smelled like a tea factory had exploded. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harry announced to absolutely no one, "I present to you the Great British Tea Challenge." Oliver groaned, but of course, he kept filming. Because if your roommate decides to humiliate himself online, the least you can do is capture it in HD. Harry stepped into the garden, holding the giant teapot on his head like some kind of royal crown. He played dramatic orchestral music from his phone, because apparently tea deserved the soundtrack of a Shakespearean tragedy. At first, he wobbled but managed to keep it balanced. He started to dance, or at least what he thought was dancing. Honestly, it looked more like he was being attacked by bees. But the teapot stayed steady, and for a few glorious seconds, it looked like maybe, just maybe, he would succeed where Jake had failed. Then, disaster. Hot tea cascaded down his face, soaking his sweater, and splashing all over Oliver's prize-winning garden gnomes. The gnomes looked like they'd just survived a hurricane. Oliver shouted, "You idiot, that was boiling hot." Harry, dripping and steaming like a soggy tea bag, raised his arms and yelled, "God save the Queen." Forgetting the Queen wasn't even alive anymore. The internet ate it up. Within hours, the hashtag tea challenge was trending. Americans in the comments were saying, "This is why we left," while Brits were replying, "At least ours had flavor." Harry was on a roll. He started doing variations, Earl Grey challenge, chamomile challenge, even a ridiculous, triple teapot tower challenge. Every video ended the same way, tea everywhere, gnomes suffering, Oliver screaming in the background. Meanwhile, Jake in the USA saw Harry's tea videos. He slammed his fist on the table. "He stole my thing. That's my chaos. But you know what? This means war. Jake decided to up his game. Forget milk. Forget tea. He wanted something bigger. Something crazier. Something that screamed America. Enter, soda. Not just one soda. Not two sodas. He went to Costco and bought an entire cart of 2-liter bottles. Coke, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Sprite, if it had bubbles, Jake bought it. He set them up in the middle of Central Park like he was about to perform a science experiment. A crowd gathered again, because apparently people in New York have nothing better to do than watch a man risk his dignity. Jake stacked the sodas into a pyramid. Ladies and gentlemen, he shouted, this is the soda challenge. He shook them. He balanced them. He even tried to juggle them. One slipped, pssh. Soda sprayed everywhere. The crowd screamed. Jake kept going. He was slipping on the sticky ground like he was ice skating on sugar. But he didn't stop. He climbed the soda pyramid like a champion and yelled, America invented chaos. Clips of Jake's soda stunt and Harry's tea disaster started colliding on TikTok. People were editing them side by side, milk versus tea versus soda. America versus UK. And that's when the comments section exploded. Who's funnier, milk guy or tea guy? America's chaos is unmatched, but the tea is iconic. Collab when? And just like that, fans demanded what no one expected, a crossover. Jake got a DM from Harry, mate, your milk is ridiculous. But I bet you wouldn't survive a proper tea duel. Jake replied instantly, name the place. Name the time. I'll bring the milk, you bring the tea. And thus, the first ever international social media challenge showdown was born. The internet went into meltdown. Memes. Fan art. Reaction videos. News headlines like, tea versus milk, the cultural battle we didn't know we needed. Even brands started tweeting about it. Jake booked a flight. Harry prepared the teapots. And the world prepared for chaos. London. A grey, rainy morning. The kind of day where even pigeons look like they've given up on life. But for Jake, this was the battlefield. He landed at Heathrow Airport, wearing sunglasses indoors and holding a giant milk jug like it was the Olympic torch. Harry was already waiting outside with 2 enormous teapots strapped to a luggage trolley. People were staring. An old lady whispered, oh dear, it's happening again. They locked eyes like 2 rivals in a boxing movie. Jake tilted his jug. Harry lifted his teapot. And without saying a word, they knew, the chaos was about to begin. The location? Trafalgar Square. Tourists, pigeons, fountains, it was perfect. By the time they arrived, hundreds of fans had already gathered, holding signs, Team Milk. Team Tea. One guy even dressed as a giant cookie, yelling, dump me. Jake climbed up on the fountain, holding his milk high. America represents, he shouted. The crowd cheered. Harry stood dramatically on the opposite side, pouring tea into tiny cups like he was at a royal garden party. And Britain shall defend her honor. Someone blasted epic battle music from a speaker. Phones were out. Live streams were running. Hashtags were already trending, hashtag milk versus tea, hashtag international challenge, hashtag who will spill first. The rules were simple, or at least, as simple as chaos could be. Each had to balance their chosen drink while dancing to the same viral song. Whoever lasted the longest without spilling would be crowned Global Challenge Champion. Round 1 began. Jake poured a gallon of milk onto his head like shampoo, then balanced another jug on top. He started shuffling, moonwalking, and even attempted the worm, slipping everywhere but somehow keeping the jug steady. The crowd screamed, USA! USA! Harry responded with pure British elegance. He balanced the massive teapot on his head, pinky finger raised, and waltzed across the fountain ledge like he was at a royal ball. "God save the tea," people shouted. A group of tourists even started singing the national anthem. Then came the disaster. Jake attempted a spin. Milk cascaded in every direction, splattering tourists, pigeons, and one poor man eating fish and chips. Harry, distracted by the chaos, tripped over a pigeon and poured boiling tea all over his own shoes. Both challengers collapsed in slippery chaos, flailing like cartoon characters on a banana peel. The crowd went insane. People weren't even cheering anymore, they were laughing so hard that some literally fell over. One guy screamed, "This is history." Clips flooded the internet instantly. American milk madness versus British tea disaster. Side-by-side edits. Slow-motion replays. Even late-night talk shows picked it up. Forget politics, the real war is dairy versus caffeine. But Jake and Harry weren't done. They decided to do a final round. One ultimate showdown. And this time, they'd combine forces. Harry whispered, "Mate, what if we mix them?" Jake's eyes widened. Tea and milk. That's already a thing. Exactly, Harry said with a grin. But what if we make it extreme? So they dragged a giant inflatable pool into the middle of the square. Fans helped pour in gallons of milk and buckets of tea until it looked like the world's weirdest latte. Then, without hesitation, Jake and Harry both cannonballed into the pool. Splash! Liquid flew everywhere. Tourists screamed. Pigeons fled. Big Ben probably shook. They emerged, soaked head to toe, and shouted in unison, "We are the champions of chaos." The internet lost its mind. Clips of the milky tea pool racked up hundreds of millions of views. Celebrities duetted it. Brands begged them for sponsorships. Even the mayor of London tweeted, "Please, no more beverages in public fountains." But the funniest part? Their fame didn't stop there. Oh no. Because soon, fans from other countries wanted in. A Canadian tried the maple syrup challenge. An Australian attempted the Vegemite spill challenge. Even someone in Italy balanced spaghetti on their head. Jake and Harry had accidentally started a global chaos movement. The internet was officially broken. Within days of the milk versus tea showdown, videos popped up from every corner of the planet. In Canada, a guy balanced pancakes dripping with maple syrup on his head, shouting, "This is Canadian culture." He slipped, face planted into the snow, and the world laughed. In Australia, someone tried balancing jars of Vegemite while wrestling a kangaroo costume. Didn't last 3 seconds. Viral instantly. In Italy, a man stacked plates of spaghetti on his shoulders and yelled, "Mamma mia, pasta power," before collapsing into a fountain. Tourists cheered like it was the Colosseum. The trend had become unstoppable. Every country had its own ridiculous, national beverage or food challenge. Even Antarctica got involved. Some researchers tried balancing penguin-shaped ice sculptures. They failed, obviously, but millions watched. Jake and Harry were stunned. What started as milk and tea chaos had spiraled into a global food Olympics. News channels reported on it seriously, like it was world politics. Today in Brazil, the coconut balancing challenge caused traffic jams across Rio. Meanwhile, Jake and Harry were enjoying their new life as unlikely celebrities. They were invited to late-night talk shows. One host asked, "So, what inspired you to dump gallons of milk and tea on yourselves?" Jake grinned, "Poor life choices." Harry added, "And a little bit of boredom." But fame wasn't easy. Every time they went out in public, people shouted, "Do the challenge." Strangers handed them milk cartons and tea bags. At airports, security guards rolled their eyes whenever they saw them. Then came the big moment. A global streaming platform announced, the first ever International Challenge Championship, live. They wanted Jake and Harry to host it. The location? A massive stadium in Los Angeles. Thousands of fans. Millions watching online. The stage was set. Jake strutted onto the stage with a golden milk jug. Harry followed with a jewel-encrusted teapot. The crowd went wild. Signs everywhere, Team Milk, Team TA, Team Chaos. Contestants from all over the world lined up with their national foods, sushi towers, burrito stacks, giant bratwursts, even a mountain of French croissants. The challenge? Balance, dance, and entertain, without spilling. The event began, and immediately, chaos erupted. A burrito exploded midair. Sushi rolled into the front row. Croissants flew like frisbees. Jake and Harry tried to commentate but were laughing too hard to speak. Then came the grand finale. Jake and Harry themselves had to perform one last challenge together. They walked onto the stage, side by side. Jake held 3 gallons of milk. Harry balanced a triple-decker teapot contraption. The crowd chanted, "Milk and TA. Milk and tea." The music started. They danced. They spun. For once, it seemed like maybe, just maybe, they'd actually succeed. The milk jugs were steady. The teapots didn't wobble. The audience held their breath. And then. Crash. Everything spilled at once. Milk, tea, soda, pasta, burritos, croissants, the entire stage turned into one giant slippery mess. Performers slid across like they were on an ice rink. Jake slipped, collided with Harry, and they both crashed into the sushi tower, sending rolls flying into the audience. The crowd went berserk. People weren't even upset, they were cheering like they'd just witnessed history. Because in a way, they had. The internet crowned them, the kings of chaos. Later that night, drenched in dairy and tea yet again, Jake turned to Harry backstage and said, "You know, this all started because I dropped some milk in New York." Harry laughed, sipping tea from his shoe because his cups were ruined. "And now we've ruined the entire world. Cheers, mate." They clinked their soggy drinks together. And that was the legend of how one American with too much milk and one Brit with too much tea accidentally created the funniest global trend of all time. The end.